Rashee Rice, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore are among the biggest dynasty losers in the month of May. We'll explain why next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us one of your first listens of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. We've got a special guest for you today. It's our guy, Nick Whalen. You can follow him on Twitter at _Nick Whalen. You can also check out all of his fantastic work over on Football Guys. I've got a Football Guys sticker right on my desktop right here. I've been a long time fan of Football Guys, Sigmund Bloom, Cecil, Matt Wallman, all those guys for years. So, Nick, I'm excited to have you on the show. On today's show, we're going to be talking about a few players who have seen a massive drop in their ADP in the month of May, courtesy of Dynasty League Football. And Nick, let's start with one of my favorite players in the league. This hurts. Rashee Rice, over the last month, down from 24th overall in startup drafts down to 33. He's now wide receiver 19. His teammate Xavier Worthy has jumped him. What's going on here?
Yeah, it's what have you done for me lately? I think with Rashee Rice, and I'm with you. I'm a big fan. I think in that offense too, where they use him as this intermediate underneath type, they manufacture some touches for him, but he's a mismatch there. And Worthy obviously is your big play type player, but people I think are going to anticipate him taking a step. But Rice has the pending suspension, maybe kind of over his head. Will that happen? Will that not? Potential suspension. And then you have the knee injury, right? And how will that linger? How will he be when he responds? So I think a lot of that is he hasn't played for a significant period of time, and some people get nervous about that stuff.
Of the two receivers, Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice, again, they're being drafted very close to one another. Wide receiver 17 for Worthy, wide receiver 19 for Rice. Which one would you prefer in your dynasty leagues?
That's a tough question. I'm gonna choose two different answers here. Okay,
I'm ready.
In a best ball, it's Worthy because you could have those huge plays. I think that could win you weeks with his speed. They also give those reverses to him. They do some fun things. But in a regular dynasty league, I would go with Rashee Rice.
I'm not sure it's all that close for me, and I'm one of the biggest Rashee Rice fans you'll see. He was going to have a monster 2024 season. I mean, he was averaging like 8 catches a game over the first 3 games of the season. Was at like 80 receiving yards during that stretch. He's just the perfect Patrick Mahomes slot receiver because he gets open quick and he makes plays after the catch. And that's exactly what that offense needs. I think Worthy's role is pretty locked in, right? He's the downfield threat. He's the guy that they're going to run these jet sweeps with, these little orbit motions to get him the ball in space. But I feel pretty good about Rashee Rice being the consistent 8, 9, 10 targets a game guy. And I think once Travis Kelce is gone from this offense,
right,
whether it's 2026 or if he's just kind of completely phased out, he won't be completely phased out by the end of the year, but I just won't be surprised if Rashee Rice basically takes over all the middle of the field snaps from Travis Kelce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was the other thing I was going to point out where, I mean, again, Kelce, Hall of Famer, fantastic player, but the vertical push that he can get now out of his legs just isn't there. So he's really just kind of a space player, kind of similar to one of your guys, Jason Witten, towards the end of his career. Like, he's just smart at this point. So, yeah, the more that Rice can kind of take over that area of the field, I think Mahomes is going to want to look his way because it'll be open more. And I don't see people like Noah Gray or some of the other ones taking away targets from Rice. So I'm with you there. The one thing I think that you still need to keep in mind, though, is, and again, people make bad decisions. Rice made one of them. could another bad decision happen moving forward? I think you have to bake a little bit of that into his ranking as well.
Yeah, we call that the knucklehead factor here on Locked On Dynasty. Like once you already have a strike against you, we just have to worry a little bit more. I think Jordan Addison's another one. Jordan Addison likely going to be suspended this year for a DUI and a speeding ticket. One more violation, and we're looking at a much longer suspension for both Rice, Jordan Addison. You guys know the names by now. Nick, I wanted to run through a couple trades for you that have happened over the last couple days regarding Rashee Rice. So these are all real trades, courtesy of Dynasty League Football. Rashee Rice for Wan'Dale Robinson, whatever, and a 2026 first-round pick.
I would go with Rice because I think his value is going to increase this year. So I know that's probably a random first, so we put it probably somewhere in the middle. But yeah, I would go Rice.
Okay. Marvin Harrison Jr. for Rashee Rice and a 2026 first-round pick.
So this is interesting. I would go with Rice in the pick, and not because I don't like Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm just not sure that he's exactly what people thought he was going to be coming out of Ohio State. He's tall, but he's not a physically imposing guy. I know that's something we want with Ted McMillan too. We want him to be a little more physical. He doesn't have that. He's not Mike Evans.
No,
he's not super sudden. And again, we know he skipped the pro day, skipped the combine. We don't know his testing numbers. And we saw that last year. I think Arizona didn't really know how to use his skill set. I think he's a little bit more of like a, like an Eric Decker, maybe like a big outside guy that can do some of the other things. So to me, I don't know he's ever going to be utilized correctly to have this ceiling that people had. So if you can give me Rice, who I think is going to be maybe equal production, maybe 80% plus the first, give me the two assets.
All right. How about a young running back? Rashee Rice and Roman Wilson. Again, another player that not even really on our radar right now. For Bucky Irving, who is currently a top 10 Dynasty running back.
I'm going to go with Rice again. I actually like Wilson. I mean, he could be the wide receiver too there. He's not very tall, I know, but he's got some good athleticism and route running out of Michigan. And also Bucky Irving's 25. I'm an ageist. I don't know if you are, Marcus, but to me I mean, Bucky Irving and RJ Harvey are like the same age. So like it's this older thing. I would rather get out of running backs in that 25, 26, 27 range whenever I can. And to me, I think you're getting like peak value there.
One last thing before we move on. We have two Chiefs receivers ranked inside the top 20 right now with Rice and Worthy. Is now the time to buy Patrick Mahomes in your Dynasty leagues? Right now over on Dynasty League Football, QB6 behind Joe Burrow, behind Jalen Hurts. Actually, what's funny, Nick, is the gap between Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes is wider than the gap between Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray. So is now the time to buy back in and Patrick Mahomes?
I don't think I can. I know I see where you're going with it in terms of the weapons, and you think that it could be there. We just haven't seen Patrick be this humongous fantasy producer in years. And that doesn't mean that he's not great. We know that he's great in those moments, especially the playoffs. Andy Reid's good at scheming it together. But I think we need to see Worthy do it over a bigger sample size. And because we know Kelsey's taking the step back, and we both like Rice. We clearly ironed that out.
Rashee Rice.
So, but they just lost, Joe Tooney. I need to see a little bit more because that 5,000 yards, 40 plus touchdown Patrick Mahomes, we haven't seen that in a long time. And I need to see that again before I would make that move.
I was saying it on Twitter on Thursday. It's okay to say the Chiefs were really good in 2024, but also say Patrick Mahomes kind of had a down year. And he was just, I don't want to call him an average quarterback because there is skill to being able to win late and put together drives. But I don't think he was particularly close to Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and Lamar Jackson last season.
No. And plus the running ability, like Mahomes is like a sneaky runner, I guess. Think of like Aaron Rodgers was, where like he knows his spots to go, but he's not going to get you those points either. So if I'm chasing points, I'm chasing the other quarterbacks.
All right, let's talk about a team that is near and dear to your heart, the Chicago Bears. DJ Moore, Rome Odunze both had massive drops in their ADP. Why is that happening? We'll discuss it next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there has never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. I've got the Oklahoma City Thunder winning the NBA championship. I think they've been the best team all season long. You can go bet right now on the futures market who you think is going to win the Western Conference Finals, the Eastern Conference Finals, and then, of course, the NBA championship. Go check out all of the futures lines on FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are here with Nick Whalen from Football Guys. Follow him on Twitter at _ Nick Whalen. Nick, let's talk about your Chicago Bears. So I'm sure you're very, very excited about this year. Is this the most excited you've been about the Bears in your life?
I'll put it this way. I think it's the most real excited that I should be.
Okay.
I've been excited before, and I've been, behind me, y'all, is the 85 Bears in a plaque. That's what we can like hang our hat on. It's been a long time, but I believe in Ben Johnson, what he's saying, what he's doing. So I think this is the most I should real believe in the Bears.
It's interesting because dynasty players are a little bit down on some of the Bears players. Let's start with Rome Odunze. Just in the last month, his ADP has dropped from 33rd overall down to 41. Among wide receivers right now, you can get him at wide receiver 22. His ADP has been pretty stable over the last 5 or 6 months, but over the last 30 days really has dropped off. Why do you think it's dropping now? And would you buy him at wide receiver 22?
The last question is yes. Okay. And part of that is, let me just talk about Rome Odunze, which I know people are going to pull up advanced stats and things from last year. And first off, if we just talk about the Bears from last year, they had 2 head coaches, 3 offensive coordinators. The offensive line was mainly backups for most of the season. It was just a mess. And Caleb was a shell of himself based off of trying to be something I think he wasn't. But despite that, in big moments against our biggest rival, whether they consider us that or not, Green Bay, he had huge catches on 4th down that were deep down the field where he was crucial, counted on, made them. A deep one against Minnesota on 4th down that he made. So in those crucial situations, Caleb looked to him. He made the play. He didn't drop it, etc. And they were fairly contested balls. So those are the moments that you want to see in a rookie. And as we know, from that rookie year to that second year is when you see the biggest jump. So from that perspective, I still believe in him quite a bit. And I've watched a lot of the all 22 from him. In terms of why his value is dropping, it's fairly obvious. The Bears draft not exactly what I expected of Colston Loveland and Luther Burden III makes it a very crowded pass catching rooms, I guess, both of them. So there's still Cole Kmet there. There's still DJ Moore there. They signed Olamide Zaccheaus. Devin Duvernay is there. Tyler Scott, if you still believe in him. So to me, I think it's very talented. And so the volume of targets, I don't believe in him either, Marcus, but in terms of the volume of targets for some of those guys, it's tough to envision one guy getting 150, and then the rest of them getting 80.
So let's just go over all of the ADPs because they've all dropped. DJ Moore down from 39 to 46 right now. He is wide receiver 24. Luther Burden, my guy, over the last month, down from 59 to 69, wide receiver 37. You're on record saying that you would buy Rome Odunze. Of these 3 players, and again, I'm going to read those ADPs again. Rome Odunze, wide receiver 22. DJ Moore, wide receiver 24. And Luther Burden, wide receiver 37. Of those 3, which one do you think is the best value?
Luther Burden III, and I don't think it's very close.
Okay.
One thing I pay attention to, despite Ryan Poles still being the GM, is the new coaching staff. Who did they invest in? They had DJ Moore signed a new contract last training camp. They just drafted Rome Odunze, and they say best player available, but they still drafted Luther Burden III with, I would say, a valuable pick at 39. that matters to me. And part of why that matters to me is watching the All 22 last year. The most sell that I would make on Chicago right now as a Bears fan is DJ Moore.
Yeah.
DJ Moore's effort last year was unacceptable, is the best term that I could come up with. He walked off the field during a play. He jogged a lot of plays. He had bad body language. When your team's not doing well, everyone wants to look at the guy that makes the most money. You should be the leader. And he wasn't doing that stuff. And I think Ben Johnson's been very clear, him and Antoine Randall, the wide receiver coach, of effort. And they are really, really going to challenge people. And it's not, you just have a job. People are going to get challenged and they have to battle for it. And to me, when you bring in a wide receiver, a former 5-star guy, Luther Burden III, you add Colston Loveland to the room, those veterans, they better be aware and they better, raise their game. And to me, I think long-term, when you're looking at Dynasty, Luther Burden III and Rome Odunze are the two guys I would invest in.
It's funny because one of the knocks on Luther Burden, at least from the national media, was, hey, he's a former 5-star recruit that maybe didn't always take every snap seriously, and there were some effort level concerns, which I have my own feelings on some of that. I think it's a little overblown personally. But it's funny now that they've also had DJ Moore, who, I mean, it's hard to deny that Ben Johnson has, said some of the things like, hey, we want guys that want to play hard. And it seemed like that was directed at DJ Moore. I know you and I have talked about this privately. It doesn't really make sense for the Bears to trade DJ Moore this year, but could you see a situation where he's not on the team in 2026?
100%. Yeah. And there's paths to that where it's not a huge financial burden, but also you look at the core of the team. I mean, Caleb will be for 2026 going into year 3, Loveland year 2, Rome year 3, and Burden year 2. Like you want to keep that group together.
Yeah.
And if there's a veteran that's not happy with targets or effort or whatever, I think it's time to move on and use that money elsewhere.
So let me hold your feet to the fire here a little bit. So if it's not DJ Moore, you said that Rome and Luther Burden are close. Mm-hmm. Which one of those two would you prefer straight up in your dynasty leagues?
I would still say Rome. I really like Luther Burden the third's film though, as you were talking about. And plus, did you see what he said in his press conference, Marcus?
I didn't. I love Luther Burden, so give it to me. I'm ready.
Yeah. So they asked after the draft. They said, it was about a week later. Hey, so I know draft night he was frustrated. He went on day 2, and they said, the draft capital stuff and falling in the draft. Is that something you're going to forget about? Now you can just focus on being a pro, etc. And he says he's never going to forget, and the people that pass on him have to pay. And I was like, let's put this in a frame. You know what I mean? But
so. I want to ask you something, Nick, because I think there's a lot of people that believe that Ben Johnson's offense in Chicago is going to look identical to what it did in Detroit. And I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Ben Johnson is a smart enough guy to know that he needs to change things up and fit the system to make the players work, right? But there is a lot of similarities between Luther Burden and Amon-Ra St. Brown, especially like early Amon-Ra coming out of USC. Is there any chance that Burden could develop into that type of player in this offense where he's just getting 10, 11 targets a game, all within 5-6 yards of the line of scrimmage?
I don't see that because I feel like he doesn't have as good of a feel within zone coverage. It's going to now the interesting common denominator is Randall L is going to be the guy developing them as the wide receivers coach. Yeah. So I'll give you that one. For me, it's going to be, I see him a little bit more as like Jamison Williams right now, where he doesn't have near the explosiveness, but the manufactured, reverses how he's going to stretch the field, at least for now. And we'll see how he develops. But, Detroit didn't have the big guy either. So like, how are they going to use Rome? I see them as very different offenses. They did a lot of gap scheme stuff. They had big linemen. They were really going to bully you up front. And in Chicago, they signed a lot of athletic linemen. It's going to be a wide outside zone scheme, which I see Caleb doing a lot of probably boots. You have that sift block backside, but then he can leak out. I think there's going to be a lot of like east and west stuff in Chicago.
I've been drafting Luther Burden in every single rookie draft. And like once we get to pick like 108, 109, like that's just my go-to guy just because I loved him so much at Missouri. And I want parts of this Chicago offense because I believe in it so much and I believe in Luther Burden's talent. So I'm with you there. Next, let's talk about three separate Ohio State wide receivers who have seen massive drops in their ADPs over the last month. We will get to all of them next. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. As training camps get closer and moves are being made, hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, Dick, I'm going to give you three Ohio State receivers that have seen their big drop in ADP. Devontae Smith, down from 30.5 to 39.6. He is currently wide receiver, I'm looking at right now, wide receiver 20. We have Marvin Harrison Jr. down from 16 to 21. He's now down to wide receiver 13. And then Chris Olave, 40th overall, down to 52 overall, wide receiver of 26. Of those three receivers, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., and oh gosh, who was the other one? I forgot off the top of my head.
You said Devontae Smith. I think you meant Terry McLaurin.
Terry McLaurin. There you go. Terry McLaurin. 31 overall for Terry McLaurin. 40.83. I apologize. I got it wrong. We're good. McLaurin, Marvin Harrison, Chris Olave. Of those three receivers, which one are you the most concerned about?
I would say I'm probably the most concerned with, and I mentioned this before, probably with Marvin Harrison Jr. because I'm not sure that the ceiling he's going to hit there. I still like him as a player. I think Terry McLaurin's a little bit of when will the age cliff hit him. I've been a huge fan of him, Marcus. I've been on podcasts pre-draft, and I've named him as like my sleeper guy. So him hitting after being Mr. Football out of Ohio was pretty cool for me. So he's a guy that I just like. He gets the most out of his frame and ability, which I just really respect those players.
Turns 30 in September, which is not old for a receiver. But we know that the way Dynasty managers react. As soon as they see that 3 in front of a player's name, they're out.
Yeah. They probably have their AARP card, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And Olave, I think it's multifold. But I'm less worried about him because, man, he really has great route running ability. It's the concussions, and then it's who's going to throw him the ball. But also, there's not a lot of other talented pass catchers to take targets away from him. So in that regard, I'm like, he has a safer floor to me.
Well, I mean, one of the things that we know is that if you have, let's say, a bad to average quarterback, that doesn't mean they can't feed your number one receiver. I look at Atlanta last year with Kirk Cousins, who was so incredibly washed, and Drake London just had a career year, 1,300 yards. I think he had 9 touchdowns. So that part of me, I'm not overly concerned. Like Tyler Shuck is probably going to start a bunch of games. He's going to be a 26-year-old rookie. They're probably going to be down a lot. So I think as long as Chris Olave is on the field, I mean, we can count him in for 8 targets a game conservatively. Yeah.
Well, I think in the same regard, and I'm hoping not stepping on toes or insulting people, but Brian Thomas Jr. last year, right? Like, I don't think T-Law is that amazing, but man, he still 8 when he was kind of the only guy there. So yeah, I'm with you. I think 8 targets a game, maybe more. Obviously the tight end, they brought Juwan Johnson back. He's okay. Rashid Shaheed is fun, but he's okay. Kamara's getting a year older. Like, Olave should be the guy, if he can stay healthy, to get you're thinking north of like 130 targets.
I think so as well. I think Olave is a steal right now because here's a couple of the receivers that are currently being drafted ahead of him. Jalen Waddle, who is, I think, 3 years older than Chris Olave. I would just rather have Chris Olave. I know the injury stuff. DJ Moore, who we just discussed. A couple of these guys that are like the same age, like Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers is going into year 3. But do you feel better about Zay Flowers than you do Chris Olave, Nick?
No, I'd probably go Chris Olave, and Zay Flowers was the wide receiver 1 in that class, but also that scheme isn't a force feed 1 scheme in Baltimore. They really spread it out there, so I don't think that the ceiling is there in Baltimore.
And even someone like Rashad Bateman, he's never going to live up to the first round pick that he was, but he's developed into a pretty decent receiver. Like I think he's been a good number 2 receiver. They did sign DeAndre Hopkins, Flowers is going to get his, but I think the ceiling for Olave is a little higher. And then Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 21. I'm actually surprised that there's that big of a gap between McLaurin, wide receiver 21, and Olave, wide receiver 26, considering there's a 6-year age gap between the two players.
Yeah, that's one where I would go with the younger player because I am an ageist. And what's going to happen in Washington this year is actually pretty interesting because I know everyone thinks, what happened last year is going to happen this year, but we saw what happened to CJ Stroud, right? Then when there's more film on offenses and players, defenses are going to adjust. I know they added Deebo Samuel, they brought back Ertz, they got Laramie Tunsil. There's some additions there, but it's still going to be run through Terry McLaurin. And you think defenses are probably going to at least bracket him where those deep balls aren't going to be able to go to him. And what are they going to do to counter in that offense?
I know this is a fantasy show, but I just needed to talk about this for 30 seconds because I haven't got to say it on a podcast anywhere. Washington's strategy this offseason by signing a bunch of old players and trading for old players is very curious to me. Like, I thought Deebo Samuel looked pretty washed last year. McLaurin's in his 30s. They brought back Zach Ertz, who is, I thought he was done when he was in Arizona. Austin Eckler's back for another year. They didn't spend a high pick on a running back. Tunsil, I think, led the league in penalties last year, and I understand he's an upgrade. But I thought that was a weird roster building move around Jaden Daniels to get really old.
Yeah. Well, you go defense too, Bobby Wagner, right? I mean, that is what they've done 2 years in a row. I understood it the first year because you didn't want your quarterback to kind of drown with nothing around him.
Yeah, you wanted culture guys in there, but at this point, it's like, why are we building a senior citizen home here?
Yeah. Well, but also why not let Luke McCaffrey get some more opportunities? See what could happen opposite
Benson, who they drafted in the second round.
Exactly. Yeah. To me, it is a little odd. But we'll see. But I do expect defenses to adjust, and we'll see if the Washington can counter that.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Make sure you follow Nick on Twitter at Nick Whalen. Check out his work at Football Guys. He does a fantastic job talking about fantasy football. One of the absolute best Bears fans and Bears analysts out there. Check out his work. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you right back here on Monday.